If you hear clitter clatter in the background, it is my cat playing with her toy. And I'm not going to stop her because it brings her joy and she brings me joy. Okay, you guys, so last week was the vice presidential debates, and I am so excited to get to talk to you about it. It was something. It was JD Vance wiped the floor. Let's just put it that way. We will get more into detail about that. But first, this is your reminder to like this video and subscribe to this channel. If you are listening on Spotify, make sure you leave me a rating and a review over there. It truly does help. I really appreciate each and every one of you who have subscribed to this channel so far. All of my other social medias are linked down below, as always. And with all of that, my name is Noelle. This is Just Say No. Let's get into it. So this was without a doubt the best debate of this election cycle. It's insane that the two vice presidential candidates are more capable than the actual presidential candidates themselves. That's crazy, actually, but it is what it is. And as I said, JD Vance absolutely dominated this debate, and it simply just was not close. But as we do with debate recaps, I want to look at the highlights, the key takeaways, the impressive or important moments, and the response online. So first things first, the very first question was about Israel because there was an attack from Iran, and if the candidates support Israel doing a preemptive strike. Now, I don't know that this is like the first question that should be asked, because the second question was about climate change, and that feels odd. I don't know that those are the two most important questions to the American people, that they are the first two for the debate, but that's what it was. Now, JD Vance used his time here. He used probably the first minute out of his 2 minutes to do a little bit of an introduction on himself. If you're not aware, if you've ever seen the movie Hillbilly Elegy, that is actually based off of his autobiography. He grew up very, very poor. His mother had a drug addiction, all of this kind of stuff. So he used that time to introduce himself. And then he very clearly and precisely answered the question. His answer was that Israel should do what Israel sees fit. It's not really up to the United States. And then we cut over to Tim Walz, and he dodges the question, does not answer it, and then uses probably a minute and a half out of his 2 minutes to talk about Donald Trump, which this is the tactic, right? This was Kamala Harris's tactic in the first debate, the only debate. Do not answer any questions and just talk about Orange Man bad, Trump bad. And it worked pretty well for Kamala in her debate because Trump is easily, he gets baited very easily when he's on a stage in that sense. JD Vance, turns out, is somewhat of a genius though, so it did not go the way that I think that Tim Walz thought it was going to go. Anyway, I bring all of that up to specifically point out the fact that Walz did not do an introduction of himself at the onset. Where JD did it, it made sense to do it. It was the first question of the night. It was his first answer of the night. It made complete sense at that point to say, hi, I'm JD Vance. This is who I am. A lot of people probably aren't aware of who I am. And then he directly answered the question. It was no problemo. In fact, it was quite skillful, I would say. Now, Tim Walz did not do that. And he, in fact, waited to do his introduction. I don't know that he was planning on doing an introduction, but he decided to do one as soon as he was actually asked a difficult question. Go figure. Y'all, when I say I'm not even certain that Joe Biden malfunctioned as hard as Tim Walz did in this moment, I sincerely mean that. So Tim Walz had claimed that he was in Tiananmen Square when things were really bad, when all of that was going on, and simply he wasn't. And so the moderators asked him if he could explain this discrepancy. And he simply just goes, well, for everyone who didn't get it at the top, I was raised in rural Nebraska, the type of place where you ride your bike down the street until the lights come on, till the street lights come on, whatever. Just gave his whole life story. Does not answer the question. Now, thankfully, the moderator did press him and said, okay. Again, the question was, why did you lie about being in Tiananmen Square? Essentially. And he's just like, I'm a knucklehead. I'm a silly, goofy guy. Let's just check that clip out.
We want to ask you about your leadership qualities. Governor Walz, you said you were in Hong Kong during the deadly Tiananmen Square protests in the spring of 1989. But Minnesota Public Radio and other media outlets are reporting that you actually didn't travel to Asia until August of that year. Can you explain that discrepancy?
Yeah, well, and to the folks out there who didn't get at the top of this, look, I grew up in small rural Nebraska, town of 400, town that you rode your bike with your buddies till the streetlights come on, and I'm proud of that service. I joined the National Guard at 17, worked on family farms, and then I used the GI Bill to become a teacher, passionate about it, a young teacher. My first year out, I got the opportunity in the summer of '89 to travel to China. 35 years ago, be able to do that. I came back home and then started a program to take young people there. We would take basketball teams, we would take baseball teams, we would take dancers, and we would go back and forth to China. The issue for that was to try and learn. Now, look, my community knows who I am. They saw where I was at. Look, I will be the first to tell you, I have poured my heart into my community. I've tried to do the best I can, but I've not been perfect. And I'm a knucklehead at times, but it's always been about that. Those same people elected me to Congress for 12 years. And in Congress, I was one of the most bipartisan people, working on things like farm bills that we got done, working on veterans benefits. And then the people of Minnesota were able to elect me to governor twice. So look, my commitment has been from the beginning to make sure that I'm there for the people, to make sure that I get this right. I will say more than anything, many times I will talk a lot. I will get caught up in the rhetoric. But being there, the impact it made, the difference it made in my life, I learned a lot about China. I hear the critiques of this. I would make the case that Donald Trump should have come on one of those trips with us. I guarantee you he wouldn't be praising Xi Jinping about COVID, and I guarantee you he wouldn't start a trade war that he ends up losing. So this is about trying to understand the world. It's about trying to do the best you can for your community, and then it's putting yourself out there and letting your folks understand what it is. My commitment, whether it be through teaching, which I was good at, or whether it was being a good soldier or was being a good member of Congress, those are the things that I think are the values that people care about.
Governor, just to follow up on that, the question was, can you explain the discrepancy?
All I said on this was I got there that summer and misspoke on this. So I will just, that's what I've said. So I was in Hong Kong and China during the democracy protests went in. And from that, I learned a lot of what needed to be in governance.
Thank you, Governor.
I mean, literally, what the f did he even say? Now, he claims that he misspoke. But my question, I guess, is his team claims that he misspoke when he said that he was in a combat zone, that he was deployed to a combat zone. He wasn't. He claims that he misspoke when he said that his wife did IVF. She didn't. So when does it stop being that he just misspoke and the fact that he just lies? Now, he's a politician. All politicians lie. But the things that he lies about are so strange. I mean, most politicians are like, no, Madam Secretary, I do not know that woman. She definitely did not have her head in between my legs under my desk. Or, no, I actually did not kill that woman. This is a false accusation. And he's like, my wife did IVF. Like, what? Like, I just don't understand why, you know? And it plays into the fact that the thing that's been said about Tim Walz is he's like the sitcom dad, right? You know, the silly, goofy, can't do anything right kind of dad. And I think that they're counting on this to really land with people. And I saw somebody do this analysis, and I think it's actually pretty spot on, because there's a lot of people on the left who are saying that he's like the dad that they never had. And that would make sense if the only father figure you had in your life was somebody off of a Disney Channel show. If you didn't actually have a dad and you just watched all of these shows and saw all of these stupid sitcom dads, then that would make sense that this is the guy that you resonate with as being a father figure. It's just like not true. It's just not realistic. And he comes off as, I think, phony. And I don't know that the whole silly, goofy uncle at Thanksgiving bit is landing with the majority of people. Granted, it does come off non-threatening, but don't you want your political leaders to be a little bit threatening? I mean, maybe not threatening, but intimidating, I guess. I just think about Kamala Harris and Tim Walz sitting down in a meeting with Putin, and that does not bring me any feelings of security whatsoever. In fact, I feel quite afraid of that scenario. So there's my thoughts on that. Let's get back to the debate. So, of course, in a debate, there's going to be gaffes, and there were quite a few of them. And unfortunately, I think the one that is going to stick the most, the one that I've seen the most chit chat about, Tim Walz, while talking about gun control, mentioned that he has become friends with school shooters.
Yeah, I sat in that office with those Sandy Hook parents. I've become friends with school shooters. I've seen it.
Honestly, what he meant to say is beyond me. Maybe he meant to say that he's become friends with the families of school shooters. I am trying my best to be gracious here. I think we can all safely assume that he didn't actually mean to say that he is friends with school shooters. However, how you get from point A to point B without addressing the fact that you went from point A to point B, the internet is the internet, and the internet is running at the speed of light with this. They took off. They're gone. They saw this. They took it. They're gone. It's everywhere. Now, to be fair, a day or two after the debate, I think it was the day after the debate, he did give a clarifying statement.
Do you want to clarify the comments that you made about school shooters?
Yeah, and look, you got to see me. These folks know me. I'm super passionate about this. The question come up about school shooting, we're talking about everything except school shootings. And I sat as a member of Congress with the Sandy Hook parents, and it was a profound movement. David Hogg is a good friend of mine. You have seen me do this. I was talking about being people where there are school shooters, and I need to be more specific on that, but I am passionate about this. This one, for my wife and I, is just, as teachers, as parents, is so personal.
Now, I don't know how clarifying that was for you all, but I'm still quite confused. What I don't understand is why he doesn't just say, hey, I misspoke. I obviously didn't mean to say that. What I meant to say was I'm friends with the families of school shooters. I sympathize with these, we could address this, but he didn't. And I just don't understand why. Because I'm trying to have good faith about this and assume that that's not what he meant to say. I mean, I think it's pretty obvious that that's not what he meant to say, but why doesn't he say that that's not what he meant to say? Okay, so after watching the Trump-Biden debate and then the Trump-Harris debate, this was so refreshing. JD Vance is the smartest person out of these four people by far, and it's not close. And he was very eloquent, and he was very gentlemanly, and it was a very civil debate. In fact, they agreed with each other a little bit more than what you would think would be reasonable. Very benefit of the doubt. So many times one of them would say, I have no doubt that you want to protect the lives of children, which is true. I don't necessarily think that anyone actually wants, for example, children to die in schools, to be gruesome, I guess, with it. But it was just, it was a very strong change of pace. But anyways, so we all remember with the Harris-Trump debate, the moderators were absolutely outrageous, and they fact-checked Trump over and over and over again, and did not fact-check Kamala Harris a single time. So I guess that there was a rule in place for this debate where there would not be any fact-checking. So with that in mind, at one point, Springfield, Ohio got brought up naturally because they're eating the dogs and they're eating the cats. And one of the moderators, very smugly, I might say, tried to fact-check JD Vance, and he simply did not let it go. He was like a dog with a bone on this particular point, and he handled it so well. He stood up for himself. And now, before we roll the clip, I want to talk about how this particular moment is being portrayed by the media, because Naturally, of course, it's not being portrayed in its honest context. Go figure. So to give you an idea, the Kamala HQ account on Twitter, one of my favorite places to find the tards online, posted a clip of this moment, but of course, they clipped the entirety of the context out of the clip. They stopped it right after Vance said the rules were that you guys weren't going to fact check. And of course, that makes Vance not look great. It kind of makes him look like he's whining. But when you watch the entire clip, that's just not the way that moment went down whatsoever. So let's check it out.
And just to clarify for our viewers, Springfield, Ohio does have a large number of Haitian migrants who have legal status. Right. Temporary protected status.
Well, Margaret, but
thank you, Senator. We have so much to get to.
Margaret, I think it's important because
we're going to turn out of the economy. Thank you.
Margaret, the rules were that you guys weren't going to fact check, and since you're fact checking me, I think it's important to say what's actually going on. So there's an application called the CBP One app where you can go on as an illegal migrant, apply for asylum or apply for parole, and be granted legal status at the wave of a Kamala Harris open border wand. That is not a person coming in, applying for a green card and waiting for 10 years. That is the facilitation of illegal immigration, Margaret, by our own leadership.
Thank you, Senator, for describing the legal process. We have so much to get to, Senator.
Those laws have been on the books since 1990.
Thank you, gentlemen.
The CBP One app has not been on the books since 1990. It's something that Kamala Harris created, Margaret.
Gentlemen, the audience can't hear you because your mics are cut. We have so much we want to get to. Thank you for explaining the legal process.
Okay, so now imagine if we had stopped it right after he said, you guys said you weren't going to fact check, right? And as you see by watching that clip, Vance is correct. He is so correct, in fact, that Chris Cuomo, the one from CNN, said that he's correct in this situation. What he's describing and what he's talking about is the fact that these Haitian migrants are not legal citizens. Yes, they have temporary legal status, but that's because they got onto an app, applied for it, and got granted legal status. They did not go through the proper channels. Just because they went through a loophole and again, temporary. The word temporary is so important here, right? Does not mean that they are legal citizens of this country, which is what Margaret Brannon was trying to say. So it's just wrong. And instead of admitting that she was wrong, what did they do? They cut the mic. And what people are saying is that they only cut Vance's mic and that they didn't cut Walls's mic because that's why we could actually still hear what Vance was saying at the very end of that clip there. Don't know that for a fact, but it's just a very telling moment. And can we also address the utterly cunty response from Brannon of thank you for describing the legal process? Bitch, as if you knew. Like, you obviously did not know the actual situation that was going on here. And so to chalk this up to, like, the response online was that, of course, JD Vance was interrupting these women to mansplain to them. Okay, then you explain it to me as a woman. As a woman, you sit here without listening to what he said. Explain to me what's going on here. You can't. And I'm not sitting here saying it's because you're a woman. I'm just saying it's because you're not as informed on the topic as JD Vance is. And just because a man showed up a woman doesn't make him misogynist. It's not sexist. Get over it. In fact, what Brannon did was pretty despicable, if you ask me, and it's pretty embarrassing. But we're going to move on from that moment. So another wild take coming from Tim Walz was when they were talking yet again about gun control. And he said that they don't want to stigmatize mental health. And sometimes it is just the guns. Name one time when it's ever just been the gun. I'll wait. You name me one time when a gun just picked itself up and committed a horrible act. I'll wait. So I did make a TikTok about this particular thing. Make sure you are following me there if you are not. And my whole point was this. The quote in its entirety was, just because you have mental health issues does not mean you're violent. Sometimes it's just the guns. And nobody is sitting here and saying that all mentally ill people are violent. what we are saying is that the type of person who commits an act of violence this way, it's pretty safe to say that they're mentally ill. Sane people do not go killing mass amounts of people, period. It's like the same concept of all thumbs are fingers, but not all fingers are thumbs. Do you understand what I'm saying here? So it's just a stupid thing to say. And once again, it's just simply never just the guns. Yeah. It's worth reiterating. And just in case we thought that this was just another word fumble and he didn't mean to say that, he reposted the quote to his Twitter. So it was definitely, that one was, he stands by that. He stands by, sometimes it's just the guns. He thought that was a whopper. He thought he hit it out of the park or whatever. That football, baseball? What sport? Baseball. Ooh. Moving on. So they also talked about abortion, and I again thought Vance did a really good job here. He reiterated Trump's stances on abortion, and if his goal was to make their ticket seem less Hitlery to the standard CNN viewer, I definitely feel like he accomplished that. He once again mentioned the fact that Trump would not do a national abortion ban. It's insane to me that he has to say this. It's insane to me how many times Trump has to say this. I think after this moment, Trump tweeted out in all caps. I mean, this thing was this long. If I can find it, I will post it here, just ranting and raving about this abortion ban thing, because he's just never said that he would do that. And it's just very antithetical to his stance on abortion. So it's stupid and goofy, but of course it's what the left is running with because they're fear mongering. And I do want to talk about Walz's response here, because at one point he says that they are pro-women. And this was one thing that I felt like a missed opportunity on part of Vance to point out how utterly radical the Harris ticket is, considering the fact that they can't even tell you what a woman is. They stand by overhauling the language in Title IX to say gender instead of sex, which essentially means that Title IX does not exist anymore, because if it says gender, then any man could come in and say that he wants to identify as a woman and infringe on women's spaces that Title IX was intended to protect. Kamala Harris has said that she supports using taxpayer dollars to help inmates transition. And we can assume that if that inmate transitions, that they'll be moved to the women's facility, because that is what is happening. They support allowing grown men into women's locker rooms. And in case you were unaware, women tend to undress in the locker room, and that's not comfortable. And if I sit here and say that Leah Thomas, the man who competed against a bunch of women in the NCAA, is in fact a man, I'm a TERF. According to the Harris administration, I'm a TERF for wanting to stand up for women's safety in women's spaces against these men. I'm a TERF. But sure, this is the party that is pro-women. I could rave about that one all day. As you can tell, it's one that I'm passionate about, but move on, we must. Now, one good jab, if you could call it that Walz got in was at the very end of the debate when they brought up January 6th, because of course they brought up January 6th. It is like one of the only legs that they have to stand on. And when I tell you that this is the sole clip that mainstream media is circulating, I mean it. Maybe this and the "you said no fact checking" clip, which is funny because I do not think that either one of these clips have the impact that Democrats think that it does. I don't necessarily think that the American people are this stupid. Some are. Obviously, CNN still has viewership, but most of them are not. The average person simply does not care about January 6th. So this question and the answer to it was probably in one ear and out the other, because they're tired of this. The average person who isn't into politics the same way I am, or the same way you probably are if you're watching this video, they care, right, about the economy, about immigration, the border. They care about crime. And on those issues, JD Vance obliterated Tim Walz, which is why they have to be circulating these lesser clips where Tim Walz might have gotten in his big one. So they're discussing January 6th and Tim Walz looks over to JD Vance and is like, "Can you say that Donald Trump lost the 2020 election?" And Vance skirts the question and just starts talking about all of the things that Kamala Harris has done. It really just wasn't the zinger that I think that they thought it was, because again, the American people, this just is not an issue that they care about anymore at all. I think the only people who care about this are the people who have CNN on all day and are 80 years old. You know what I'm saying? Or they're 20 years old and in college. Most people don't give a Those are all of like the highlights, but I want to talk briefly about like kind of the optics of the debate, because mainstream media is trying to turn this into a positive for Tim Walz, and it's truly astounding. So to give you an idea, Politico posted a body language analysis, and they said, yes, Vance's beard matters. Vance is the first White House wannabe to wear facial hair in 80 years. Research indicates that voters see beards as more masculine. That can be positive to some, but to others, especially women, it can be negative, conveying aggression and opposition to feminist ideals. Now, that's a funky thing to say on its own. That's already funky. But let's check out their analysis of Tim Walz, because from the clips you've seen, we can all agree that that man looks terrified. He looks like he is about to shit his pants. He is not comfortable on that stage whatsoever. But let's see how they dig him out. Walz's wide eyes show his passion. Wow, that's insane. Eye popping can sometimes be a sign of surprise, like when they called him out on Tiananmen Square. But for Walz, it simply revealed his emotional intensity, like during an exchange about abortion. The dynamic and emphatic facial motion grabs the viewer's attention. For Walz, it gave extra weight to his feelings and held our gaze. That, honestly, hats off. That's impressive. The amount of spin is, it's impressive. I really don't know what else to say because of how batshit that is. But, wow, you did something there. Okay, so another thing that was funny coming out of this debate is at several points when Walz was speaking, Vance would just glance over to the camera. Like if he's looking like this at Walz, he'd just be like,
there was a number of incidents in the vice presidential debate tonight where J.D. Vance was looking at Tim Walz, looking at him from the side, and then turned without moving his head and raised the eyebrow to the camera like that, basically to make eye contact with the audience at home. Like, do you believe this guy?
And it's been coined the Vance glance, which I think is absolutely hilarious. But it just demonstrated a large amount of composure and confidence on Vance's part that just was absolutely lacking for Tim Walz. But in all reality, I highly doubt that this will have any serious impact on the election. Vice presidential debates tend to not get as much attention as the presidential debates, understandably. But that said, I actually haven't checked. I should have checked before I recorded this, the viewership for the VP debate, because political tensions are so high. I wouldn't be surprised. This was the most watched VP debate in American history. And again, I don't know that it's going to have such a huge effect because you're not voting for the vice president, you're voting for the president. But I do think that Vance did a good job of tampering down the intensity of the Trump ticket and balancing him out, whereas Tim Walz added to the chaos. Kamala Harris's ticket is chaotic with her, and Tim Walz just added a ton more chaos. And I don't know if the American people are going to catch on to that. That's just my personal feeling after watching the debate and how I saw that. CNN posted this, taking the average of 5 different polls. 48% of Americans think that Vance won compared to 46% for Walz, which is honestly astonishingly close numbers. I don't know if we all watched the same debate, but I guess he wasn't DOA upon entering the stage, so the bar is in hell. And also, this is your reminder that at the point of posting this, the election is in less than 30 days. So do make sure that you are registered to vote, even if you are somebody who thinks that your vote doesn't matter. Think about it like this. If 15,000 people in Arizona felt like their vote didn't matter, which is a more than probable number, but they went and voted anyways, Arizona would have been red in 2020. This is an incredibly incredibly close election, and every vote does matter. And if enough of us show up to vote, then there's no way that anything sneaky and weird can happen. So go vote. I think early voting has started in most states. So if you have to go early, go early. I do not recommend mailing anything in. Go to your physical place. If you go early, there probably won't be a line. So get it done. Go vote. Very important. But with all of that, thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure you are subscribed to this channel. There will be a new video out on Thursday. And we will chat again on the podcast on Monday. Bye.